I punched in at 6 a.m. on my first day at TitanMart, excitement and nerves twisting in my gut. The vast aisles stretched before me like city blocks, gleaming freezers humming, deli cases polished to a sterile shine, and endless shelves of cereal boxes lined up like sentinels. Manager Kelly welcomed me with a brisk nod and handed me a steaming cup of coffee. She pointed out the break room, the stock rooms, even the emergency exits. Each detail drilled into me until day one felt more like do or die. Behind us, the store's fluorescent lights buzzed in dull white. For a moment, everything felt routine, even comforting. The world here was orderly, predictable, built on price tags and neat packaging. Then came the faintest rumble beneath my feet, an almost distant grumble, like a subway train rolling into the station. I glanced around, puzzled, as a single can of beans teetered on the edge of an end cap. In the blink of an eye, the ground shivered and the rails of normal life cracked. That tremor was my welcome to TitanMart, and the day would never be the same. I checked my watch as I stepped through the automatic doors of TitanMart. 6 a.m. on the dot, my very first shift. The store was bathed in that peculiar half-light of pre-dawn and fluorescent bulbs, each aisle gleaming with fresh stock. I'd spent weeks nervously picturing this moment, the hum of the big freezers, the antiseptic scent of the deli, the neat rows of cereal boxes that looked like little skyscrapers. "Welcome aboard, rookie," my manager Kelly said behind me, clipboard in hand. She wore her name badge like a medal and had those crisp, no-nonsense eyes that seemed to catalog everything. "We open in 15. Coffee's on the house, so grab a cup and we'll run through the day one drill." I forced a smile, nodding, and let her lead me toward the break room. I was a bundle of nerves, my palms slick, heart racing. All I could think was, don't mess this up. A distant rumble cut through the fluorescent buzz. The store manager paused at the coffee machine, eyebrow raised. I thought it was the subway train rattling the platform below. Then a shudder ran under my feet. The lights flickered once, twice. A stack of canned beans on the end cap trembled, then toppled. My first instinct was to shout, but the ground convulsed again, harder. The shelves lining the cereal aisle swayed like trees in a gale. A woman screamed. Plastic containers of yogurt rattled off the refrigerated doors. At the same moment, a shelf in aisle 4 gave way with a thunderous crash, soups and beans rolling like cannon fire. I froze. A small boy, no more than 8, dove sideways just as a tin can clipped his arm. He collapsed to the floor, whimpering as a red welt bloomed on his skin. The rattling can spun away into the aisle's shadows. "Move! Get clear!" Kelly barked, her calm cracking for the first time. She lunged past me, pivoting to shout instructions, but someone had already tripped. The kid's mother was scrambling, eyes wide, calling his name. My legs felt like jelly. "I'm supposed to help," I told myself. But all I could do was stare at the kid clutching his arm, gasping for breath. Guilt seized my throat. This was my first day, and I'd frozen when someone needed me. The trembling subsided in a final convulsion, leaving the store silent except for the hum of emergency lights switching on. Everything glowed in a harsh red, like the inside of a wound. Dust drifted from the dropped ceiling tiles, drifting through the stale air. Kelly sprinted forward and cupped the boy's cheek, shouting, "Isotopical wipes! Grab an ice pack!" Her voice was steady even as her legs shook. She glanced at me, expectation blazing in her eyes. I swallowed hard and dropped to one knee beside the boy. "It's okay," I said, though my voice quavered. "I've got you." I tore open a first aid packet, hands trembling so badly I nearly spilled the antiseptic. He flinched as the cool wipe touched his cut, but the tears in his eyes darted to me. Hope and fear mingled there. The manager barked again, "Bandages! Now!" And an aisle over, someone handed us a fresh pack. I wrapped his arm with clumsy care, my stomach convulsed with guilt and relief. I did something right, I realized, just barely. Still, the shake had rattled more than shelves. It rattled my confidence. Over the PA, a voice crackled. "Attention all staff and shoppers. Due to seismic activity, please remain calm and follow emergency protocols." That tinny announcement felt miles away, distorted by static and panic. Kelly clasped a hand on my shoulder. "Good save," she said quietly, her tone softer now. "But this is just the beginning. We need to corral everyone to the stock rooms." I nodded, rising. My gaze drifted down the aisle, fallen cans, scattered cereal, the boy clutching his bandaged arm, his mother's grateful but anxious face. I squared my shoulders. My first day on the job was already a disaster, but I wasn't going to let it end there. I would learn these protocols, I would help these people, and I would not freeze again. With Kelly leading the way, I followed her through a gap in the collapsed shelving, steeling myself for whatever tremor or trial came next. The emergency lights snapped on in a crimson wash, turning TitanMart into some kind of twisted cathedral. Every aisle glowed like a blood-soaked corridor. The hum of the freezers died, replaced by the distant groan of settling shelves. Kelly's voice cut through the haze. "Everyone to the stock rooms, now!" She grabbed my arm and steered me past toppled carts and shattered glass. Overhead, a ceiling tile hung by its wires, swaying like a pendulum. We funneled dozens of shaken shoppers through a gap near the back of the store. I recognized the fumbling of the exit drills in every terrified face, the same terror I'd felt when the boy got hurt. My heart hammered as crates of soda barrels crashed to the floor beside me. At the stockroom door, Mr. Lin stood waiting, calm as if he'd known this was coming. He carried a clipboard and a handful of bottled water. His silver hair fell in a perfect arc, and his eyes were unhurried, so different from the panic around us. Inside, the narrow corridor between shelves became our sanctuary. Boxes of cereal towers formed walls. Pallets of bottled water were our barricade against the unknown outside. We huddled around a makeshift table of plywood on milk crates. Mr. Lin cleared his throat. "We have 20 bottles of water and 10 cases of canned food. Let's ration 2 bottles per group of 5 every 6 hours." His voice was level, almost soothing. A murmur rose. "That's not nearly enough," someone shouted. A tall man with a torn jacket shoved forward, chest heaving. "We're not lab rats. You can't tell us to wait." Kelly stepped between Mr. Lin and the man, though her uniform collar was stained with dust. "Sir, protocol." I watched Mr. Lin's cool gaze sweep the crowd. Then, deliberately, he unscrewed his own bottle cap and handed it to a trembling mother clutching her daughter. "Here," he said quietly, "take mine." The room froze. Even the man in the torn jacket stilled, eyes widening. Mr. Lin didn't hesitate. He offered his last personal bottle, the one he'd carried for himself. I felt something shift inside me. Doubt turned to respect. Suspicion softened into gratitude. If he was willing to give up his own water, maybe he deserved our trust. Kelly cleared her throat. "All right, we stick to the plan. Volunteers to help inventory medical supplies?" She pointed down a narrow side aisle labeled Store Office, Authorized Personnel Only. I swallowed hard and raised my hand, partly to help, partly to escape the rising tension. A few others joined me, eyes glued to Mr. Lin's face. He nodded once, imperceptibly, and turned back to the ration chart. As we filed out, I glanced over my shoulder. The rest of the survivors huddled in the low red light, a tense mix of hope and fear. TitanMart had become our cage and our only refuge. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what came next. In here, between the stock rooms and the collapsed aisles, I was no longer just the rookie. I was part of a fragile community on the brink, trying to survive in a world gone upside down. We filed down the narrow side aisle toward the store office, boxes of first aid kits and prescriptions stacked haphazardly along the way. My hands still trembled from prying apart cans in the stock room, but I forced myself to focus. Anything to keep the dread at bay. Kelly led the way, clipboard clutched to her chest. Her uniform was smudged with dust, and I could see the tremor in her voice as she briefed us. "We're checking all medical supplies, bandages, antiseptics, any over-the-counter painkillers. Report back in 30 minutes. I glanced back through the half-open office door. Mr. Lin was still in the stockroom corridor, tallying rations in the harsh red glow. I felt that familiar tug of respect and a whisper of doubt. If he'd given up his last water bottle, why was he still so calm? We crept past the pharmacy counter, flashlight beams dancing over cracked glass at the till. Then came the low groan of metal, and the building pitched sharply beneath us. An aftershock. Kelly staggered, her clipboard slipping to the floor. I lunged to steady her, but the world convulsed again. From somewhere behind us, a beam snapped free with a splintering crack and crashed into the corridor, sending a cloud of plaster dust tumbling through the air. A scream echoed. It was Mr. Lin. We sprinted back, Kelly leading, me on her heels, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. The stockroom entrance was blocked, a wooden beam pinning Mr. Lin's shoulder to the concrete floor. His calm face was streaked with blood from a gash above his brow. Kelly froze. Her eyes darted between the beam and the crumpled clipboard in her hand. "We can't," she started, voice tight. "Protocol," she meant. "Wait for rescue teams. Risk everything." I didn't hesitate. Every rule Kelly ever taught me vanished in an instant. "We have to help him," I yelled, dropping to my knees beside Mr. Lin. "Stay back," Kelly's voice cracked. She raised her hand like a commander, but even she wasn't certain. Mr. Lin's eyes met mine, pain flickering there, but also trust. He squeezed my arm. "Go on," he rasped. Adrenaline surged. I wedged my shoulder under the beam, bracing against the rough wood. My boots slid on the dust-slick floor, but I forced myself to push, feeling the beam grind against the concrete. Sparks flew from a severed wire overhead, sizzling like raindrops on hot metal. Kelly stood frozen, watching. Then, as the beam shifted an inch, something changed in her eyes. She stepped forward, yanked at my jacket, and together we heaved the beam upward, freeing Mr. Lin with a rattling groan. He gasped, clutching his shoulder, then managed a crooked grin. "Thank you," he whispered. Kelly knelt beside him, her strict posture gone. Tears welled in her eyes as she tore a strip from her own uniform to staunch the bleeding. I panicked," she admitted, voice small. I helped Mr. Lin to his feet. He leaned on both of us, bruised but upright. In that cramped, dust-filled corridor, I saw the shift clearly. Leadership wasn't about rules or checklists. It was about risking yourself for others, even if it meant breaking every protocol you knew. As we guided Mr. Lin back to the office, the aftershocks still quivering through the walls, I realized the cage we'd built in TitanMart had cracked too, and now all we had was raw humanity holding us together. Mr. Lin's arm throbbed, but he insisted on pressing on. Kelly hovered behind us, her uniform now streaked with plaster dust and blood. The aftershocks had eased to tremors, but every groan of steel and pop of concrete kept us on edge. "Seasonal stock," I muttered, scanning the dim corridor. Then I spotted it, bundles of LED strip lights, still coiled and unopened in their plastic sleeves. An idea sparked. "Here," I said, ripping one from its packaging. I fumbled with the battery pack, my fingers slick with sweat, until the thin strip pulsed to life in my hand, tiny points of white light dancing like fireflies. Kelly raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue as I wrapped the strip around the handle of a broken broom, fashioning a makeshift torch. We clicked on 2 more strips and handed them to the others who'd volunteered, Marisol from electronics and Jamal from produce. Soon, our ragtag rescue party was lit by 3 wavering beams, cutting through the dust clouds like beacons. We crept back toward the collapsed aisles. Every shadow threatened to swallow us. Broken cartons littered the floor, their contents long since picked through by panicked shoppers. Now, the survivors in our party moved slowly, trusting the LED lights more than the emergency reds that had failed us. In aisle 12, where the frozen foods stood sentinel, the temperature had plummeted. Ice crystals blanketed the products. We ducked inside for warmth, pressing our backs against a wall of frost-lined freezers. Marisol pried open a door and handed out granola bars she'd looted from a dropped end cap. "That's our new currency," she joked, biting into the crumbs. "Granola and tuna." Jamal nodded, holding up a tin. "I traded a pack of batteries for this." He tapped the LED handle. "Worth it." I realized how strange it was. Under normal circumstances, these LEDs would have gone unnoticed, buried in holiday display. Now they were lifelines, guiding us through TitanMart's twisted innards. We followed a service corridor I'd noticed on my store walkthrough, the one marked Employees Only. Marisol and Jamal scouted ahead, their LED beams bobbing over dented carts and toppled shelving. The air smelled of cardboard, sweat, and something acrid, probably a snapped gas line. Suddenly, the light caught a door marked Store Office. We pushed it open and spilled into a cramped back room littered with paperwork and framed photos. My torch beam swept over certificates of Employee of the Month, and behind them, a bulletin board pinned with snapshots. Mr. Lin in a volunteer uniform, stacking cans side by side with other retirees. Mr. Lin handing out food to a line of store employees during last year's holiday drive. I swallowed, my heart tightening. He was a volunteer, here. Kelly knelt beside the board, tracing her finger over the photos. He helped keep this place running long before today. Her voice was low, reverent. Mr. Lin leaned against the wall, wincing as the pain in his shoulder flared, yet he managed a small, proud smile. "This place was more than a store to me," he said. "It was community." I crouched to adjust the LED strip on the corner desk, making enough light for all of us to see clearly. That explains your calm, I whispered. You've been through worse in here. He nodded. I've seen storms, floods, you name it, but nothing shook me as much as watching people I care about suffer. His gaze rested on me. Thank you for saving me. No sooner had he finished than the floor rumbled again, this time more distant, like the earth was groaning in its sleep. Kelly straightened, determination flickering in her eyes. Okay, we restock the medical supplies, then head for the service exit. I checked my makeshift torch and passed it to Marisol. My own LED handle felt warm in my hand, a steady heartbeat in the gloom. As we filed out of the office, each of us carrying tins, bars, and aching hope, I realized TitanMart wasn't just a cage anymore. It was our crucible, where fear was remade into ingenuity, and strangers became a family bound by light in the dark. By the time we reached the service exit, exhaustion weighed on every step. My shoulders ached from prying at rubble, and the makeshift LED torch in my hand flickered with low battery, just like our dwindling hope. Outside the office door, Kelly knelt again, tearing strips from her uniform to wrap Mr. Lin's shoulder more securely. He winced but nodded. The pain was a reminder of what we'd risked. A tremor rolled through the store, gentler than before, but ominous. Somewhere deeper in TitanMart, a beam groaned. The emergency floodlights sputtered and sparks rained from exposed wiring overhead. Everyone, move! Kelly shouted, voice steadier now. We're almost there. We funneled into the back hallway that led to the loading docks, our ticket out. But as we turned the corner, a massive crash echoed ahead. I froze. Packed pallets had tipped en masse, creating a barricade of steel cages and cardboard. Jamal's face went pale. That was the upper mezzanine collapsing, he said. The rumble continued like an angry beast shaking its chain. Mr. Lin gritted his teeth. We can't go back, and we can't go forward. He leaned heavily on Kelly, gaze fixed on the barrier. Panic flickered among the group. A woman sobbed quietly, clutching her child. A store clerk shook her head, eyes full of defeat. My heart pounded. This is it, the breaking point. I swallowed down the lump in my throat and stepped forward. The barricade was massive, but if we could shift one cage at a time, and if we worked together, help me move this, I yelled, grabbing the lip of a fallen metal cage. Kelly joined me, then Marisol, then Jamal. Piece by piece, we lifted, heaved, and slid the cages, groaning against their weight, until we formed a narrow gap. Dust billowed as the final pallet shifted. Through the opening, I could see the early evening sky, thin slivers of gold between collapsing roof panels. Go, go! I urged, heart in my throat. One by one, we scrambled through. Kelly supporting Mr. Lin, Marisol carrying 2 tins of soup, Jamal clinging to the LED handle like a lifeline. I was last. As I cleared the barricade, a roar above shook the concrete. A shower of debris rattled at the entrance. I dropped to my knees, pulling Kelly's discarded flashlight from my pocket and shining it upward. A cluster of beams caught a section of ceiling wavering, ready to fall. My breath came fast, but there was no time to hesitate. With a surge of adrenaline, I kicked at a gnawed piece of broken tile, sending it down the hall far from us. Then I scrambled up, brushing dust from my jacket, and ran. Outside, the loading dock doors stood crooked, half open. The air was thick with dust and the scent of gas, but it was freedom. We spilled into the cracked concrete courtyard, blinking against the fading light. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the shattered glass walls. Mr. Lin sank to his knees, supporting himself on the ledge of a collapsed pallet. Kelly pressed her hand to her forehead, tears streaking through the dust. I sank beside them, chest heaving. My legs trembled not from the quake, but from everything I'd done and everything I'd become in these last hours. In that breaking moment, as the building behind us groaned one final time, we were no longer just survivors huddled in a cage. We were a team forged in chaos, bound by every risk we'd taken for each other. And though the world around us had cracked, our resolve stood solid. We crouched on the cracked asphalt beyond the loading dock, the jagged edge of TitanMart's facade looming behind us like a wounded giant. Sirens droned in the distance, their wail both promise and threat. We'd escaped the building, but we weren't safe yet. Kelly pressed a trembling hand against Mr. Lin's back. He leaned into her support, breathing shallow gasps as adrenaline faded into pain. Marisol and Jamal huddled close, sharing a single LED torch between them. I wiped sweat and dust from my brow. The evening sky, streaked in bruised purples and gold, felt unreal, like we'd fallen through the world's seam into a nightmare. Beyond us, the parking lot was a graveyard of upturned carts and overturned cars. Concrete slabs heaved like tectonic puzzles. Okay, I said, voice hoarse. We need to move. Find a safe zone. My hand shook as I lifted my makeshift torch. It sputtered, its battery nearly spent. Jamal offered me his handle. Here, he whispered. I'll stick to your light. I nodded, passing it back to him. Let's stick together. We can follow the road toward the city center. Rescue crews will set up triage there. Mr. Lin straightened, wincing but resolute. Thank you for saving me, for saving us, he said quietly. I owe you all my life. Kelly shook her head. No, we owe you. You kept us calm. You gave us a plan when everything collapsed. I looked at them, our ragged band bound by fear, hope, and the faint light of an LED strip. Then I spotted movement, a flicker of flashlights near the store's shattered entrance. Rescue teams. Our hearts lifted, but between us and safety lay the parking lot, uneven, fractured, and dotted with dangerous traps. A shard of rebar jutted from a cracked slab. A puddle of spilled fuel hissed where cars still dripped gasoline. I led the way, eyes scanning every inch. Marisol offered me half a granola bar, which I accepted gratefully. We moved slowly, stepping over debris, guiding Mr. Lin between us. As we crossed the lot, a distant rumble shook the air. Aftershock still lingered, as if the earth refused to relent. I tensed, heart hammering, but kept moving. One false step could send me sprawling across jagged concrete. When we reached the rescue perimeter, a line of emergency vehicles and paramedics shouting instructions, TMZ lights spun overhead, painting us in strobing reds and blues. A young EMT rushed out, waving. Over here, we've got stretchers and first aid. I guided Mr. Lin toward the medics. He turned to me, shoulders stooped but eyes bright. You did more than follow a protocol, he said. You taught me what it means to lead. Kelly brushed dust from her hair, tears streaking down her cheeks. You taught us all. I swallowed hard. My first day at TitanMart had begun with shaken cereal boxes and a frightened child. Now it ended with sirens and hospital stretchers. I felt my inexperience melting away, replaced by something steadier. A fierce conviction that even in a world cracked by disaster, we could still build bridges of compassion. Before they whisked Mr. Lin away, I pressed something into his hand, a small scrap of LED strip, my first makeshift torch. For light, I told him, in case the aftershocks bring more darkness. He smiled, gripping it tightly. I'll pay it forward. I watched as he climbed onto the stretcher, then turned to Kelly, Marisol, and Jamal. We exchanged exhausted, elated looks, survivors and friends, united by what we'd faced. Behind us, TitanMart's silhouette faded into smoke and ruin. Ahead of us, the chaos of rescue and recovery beckoned. I took a deep breath, letting the night air fill my lungs. My first day on the job was over. In its place stood something I never expected to find, my purpose, to be the light in someone else's darkness. And in that moment, I knew whatever came next, I would not freeze again. The ambulance lights receded behind us like distant fireflies, and I stood at the edge of the cordoned-off parking lot, staring at the shattered shadow of TitanMart. The great retail cathedral that had towered over my first day now lay in fractured ruins, its aisles of comfort and routine leveled into chaos. I slipped the spare LED strip into my pocket. It felt like a promise. Kelly approached, her face drawn but determined. Marisol and Jamal lingered by a stack of emergency blankets, sharing whispered hope and fear. We'd been strangers at dawn. Now we were survivors, bound by every tremor, every choice to risk ourselves for others. A medic waved us forward. Beyond the tape, rescue crews moved with crisp efficiency, triage tents, search dogs, and heavy machinery lifting debris. The world felt impossibly large and terrifying, yet for the first time it also felt full of purpose. Where do we go from here? Kelly asked, voice hushed. I swept a hand across the horizon, where distant streetlights flickered through dust and smoke. We help, I said. We find shelter, set up supplies, check on the neighbors still trapped. We carry on the work Mr. Lin started. Marisol smiled, clutching her LED like a talisman. I'm with you. Jamal nodded, shouldering an aid bag. Me too. Kelly squared her shoulders. TitanMart may be gone, but we'll rebuild the community it served. Try it, one block at a time. I took that first uncertain step off the cracked asphalt and into the dimly lit street beyond, the weight of the LED strip in my pocket a steady heartbeat. Every shattered window and broken beam reminded me of how fragile normal life could be. But as long as we had light and each other, we had a chance. In the distance, A lone siren trailed off into the night. Above us, the sky was dark but clear, stars peeking through the dust cloud. I tilted my head back, letting the cool air wash over me. My first day at TitanMart had begun with nervous excitement and ended in survival and solidarity. It taught me that when the ground beneath you shakes, you find strength not in concrete or protocol, but in the people beside you, and in the light you choose to carry forward into whatever comes next. What would you do? If you were on your first day at a new job when a massive earthquake struck, would you follow protocol or trust your gut? Have you ever experienced a real-life disaster? Tell us how you coped in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, hit and subscribe for more immersive horror survival tales. Thanks for watching.